Good afternoon. Welcome to Yahweh's Learning Channel. My name is Brother Charles Williams. Today we're going to do a study on the Hebrew root word for the word Hebrew. We want to look at what that word means. The word Hebrew means actually in the Hebrew. Now here's a couple of questions we're going to start off with. Who is Hebrew? What does it mean to be Hebrew? What does that really mean? We find the first usage of the Hebrew, the word Hebrew in the Tanakh relating to Abraham. Genesis chapter 14, verse 13.
And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Anor, and these were confederate with Abram.
Okay, so we see here that Abram was Hebrew, it states here. Okay, now genetically speaking, Hebrew means any descendant of Eber. In fact, Strong's acknowledges this in linguistic connection back to Eber. Let's look at the Hebrew number 5680. Panoramatically from Hebrew 5677, which we'll look at in a moment. In Ebronite, that is Hebrew, or a descendant of Eber. Now, if we look back at the number for 5677, it says the same as 5676, Eber, the name of two patriarchs and four Israelites. Now let's step further, and we go to 5676. It comes from 5674, properly a region across, but only used adverbially with or without preposition on the opposite side, especially of the Jordan, usually meaning the east. Let's take one more step backwards. The Hebrew 5674, a primitive root, to cross over. That's putting it real simple, like to cross over. Now, just in this Hebrew Chaldee lexicon says it like this. Eber appears to carry the meaning of the region on the other side, situated across a stream or a sea. Eber, as an ancestor of Abraham, was the great-great-grandson of Noah. However, that would simply be the possible physical understanding of the original word for Hebrew. How many of you know that the nation of the Hebrews is less about genetics and more about spiritual significance? Any student of the scriptures quickly learns that there is often a deeper practical understanding to consider than just the physical. You see, the physical teaches the spiritual. After Noah landed the ark, he had a son named Shem. Now, Eber was a descendant of Shem. Now, according to some Jewish traditions presented in ancient writings, the Abu Issa, Eber resisted Nimrod's command to build the Tower of Babel. Eber crossed over from Babylon to the land across the river, outside of Nimrod's territory. In the wilderness, Eber and his people appear to have retained the Hebrew language, while because of the Tower of Babel, or Babylon, Babel comes from Babylon, Yahweh confused the languages of everyone else. As already mentioned, the name Hebrew is first correlated with Abraham, whose name appears to have come from his great-grandfather, Eber. Abraham and his sons Isaac and Jacob distinguished themselves as men who would migrate away from Babylon by crossing a river. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all crossed over from their homeland to the new territory. The Midrash, which is an ancient commentary on part of the Hebrew scriptures attached to the biblical text, quotes three options as to where the Hebrew name comes from. The first one is Rabbi Yehuda. He taught that the word Eber means opposite side. Abraham believed in one Elohim, and the rest of the world worshiped man-made gods. Thus, Abraham stood on one side, and the entire world stood on the other side. Now, Rabbi Nehemiah theorized that the word Hebrew is a reference to Eber. And finally, the rabbis held that the word Hebrew is a reference to the fact that Abraham came from the other side of the river, and he was not a native of Canaanite. So basically, it's generally understood that the Hebrew means one who is opposed and or one who has crossed over. Now, some parallels might immediately come to mind. For example, historically speaking, consider the time the Hebrews crossed over the Red Sea and opposed or separated themselves from the Egyptians. Exodus chapter 14, verses 21 and 22.
And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahweh caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left.
Okay, now, or from a futuristic connection, if you want to look at a futuristic correct connection of it, Revelation chapter 18, verse 4.
And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues.
Okay, so how does the word Hebrew apply to us then? In the faith, we cross over from darkness to light. John chapter 12, verse 46.
I am come a light into the world, that whosoever believes on me should not abide in darkness.
Okay, and let's look at 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14.
Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion has light with darkness?
Okay, and Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8.
For you were sometimes darkness, but now you are light in Yahweh. Walk as children of light.
Okay, so we're to separate ourselves from the wicked ways of the world. Romans chapter 12, verse 2.
And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Elohim.
So we see in this scripture that we're not supposed to be conformed to this world. John chapter 15, verse 19.
If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hates you.
Okay, let me put it to you simply like this. And that is, in this way, all who are in the faith are Hebrews. We've crossed over from the ways of the world to the ways of Yahweh. But there's more. If you study the pictograph meaning of the Paleo-Hebrew, which assigns a meaning to each of the Hebrew letters, the word Hebrew would look something like this. It'd be reading from right to left, because the Hebrew reads right to left, it would be Ayin, Beit, Resh, Yod, and Tav. And this, in the Hebrew meanings, would be see in man the hand or the mark. That's what the letters in the Hebrew actually mean. That's their meanings. And in the English structured sentence, this would be understood as something like see the man. See in man the hand and the mark. The mark on the hand. So we find in this section of verses often referred to as the Shema, meaning to listen and obey. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 9.
Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our Elohim, Yahweh is one. You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
Okay. So what does placing the commandments as signs on the forehead mean? It means that the word of Yahweh is to be in our heart, our mind, metaphorically represented by the frontlets between our eyes. This is where our faith is internalized. Our faith manifests visibly by what we do. Our faith is visible by action. It is evidenced by action. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1.
Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Okay, faith is the things hoped for. Okay, what does placing the commandments as signs on the hand mean? Well, our faith is unseen because it starts as being internal, and it begins in our heart and our mind. It follows that our actions are dictated by what rules our mind. This is represented by the word of Yahweh being a mark on our hand. And the word of Yahweh is imprinted on our heart and mind. It'll be demonstrated by our actions. And the Shema, this is metaphorically represented by the word of Yahweh being a mark on our hand. Let's consider 1 John chapter 5, verses 2 and 3, showing how our faith is a faith resulting in action.
By this we know that we love the children of Yahweh, when we love Yahweh and keep his commandments. For this is the love of Yahweh, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous.
Okay, we see that his commandments are not grievous. So, our faith in the word of Yahweh begins in our heart and mind. But this is evidenced by what we do. And as a Hebraic metaphor to show this is the hand. Going back to that picture again. See in man the hand and the mark, or the mark on the hand. So as Hebrew, the word of Yahweh is to be in us as man and on our hand. Meaning the word manifests first in our heart and mind, which leads us to directing our actions, and our way to live our life. As James appropriately said it in chapter 2, verse 18.
Yea, a man may say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works.
Okay? That is a Hebrew. And that's the end of the study for today. We thank you very much for coming and listening today. We hope that you were blessed by this message. Yahweh bless.
Yahweh's Learning Channel thanks you for watching this video. We hope you were edified by this content. Reach out to us with the information provided on screen, or you may click on the links to view more of our videos. Please subscribe to be notified of new uploads. Until next time, Shalom.